BAM Radio Network.
When kids can organize information well, then they love to learn and they're driven to learn, and it's a joyous experience. And what we know about music is music helps organize the brain. So it's really the perfect combination. When music is brought into the learning, then kids love to learn and the brains get organized and they function the way they should, and then we have kids that want to read and want to learn.
Welcome to Music and Learning. I am Marianne Harmon. Hi, John. Hi, Annalisa. Thanks for being with us today. The words chicka chicka boom boom have helped many children read. You and Bill Martin Jr. co-authored that book and also created the landmark supplemental reading program, The Sounds of Language. Please share what that program is with our audience and how it can be helpful in learning to read.
First of all, it was an honor and pleasure to work with Bill Martin for over a dozen years. And really, the Sounds of Language premise was from a Robert Frost collected letters, where he said, quote, "A sentence makes a single sound on which other sounds known as words are strung." So the premise is that just the joy and the rhythms of language make a beautiful music. And if we instill and incorporate that music, it'll just give kids an easy springboard to not only reading, but the joy of language.
Okay. Annalisa, do you have any comments you'd like to make about your chicka chicka boom boom experiences?
I have 3 kids of my own, and, Chicka Chicka Boom Boom and all those books that have rhythm and meter and rhyme, and, they really make melodies similar to music, and those are the books that, before they read, my kids are really, really drawn to. They're the ones that get them excited about not only hearing books, but wanting to learn to read themselves.
And to keep repeating them. One of your quotes, John, and I know now you work with David Plummer and have continued on with many wonderful more books along this line, and you've said, "Melody and song carry words along." Why does adding a lyrical melody help children read, and what data do you have on how effective this type program has been at actually developing young readers?
Well, we know that music lights up the brain, left-right hemisphere. You have this rainbow bridge called the corpus callosum, and so there's firings back and forth. You get whole brain, and therefore there's just more retention. It's like a rheostat light you turn up the rheostat, and it's just absorbed naturally. So there's a good bit of research coming out constantly on the power and magic of music, as opposed to a more didactic, linear approach, which is an isolated firing in the brain, which is pure decoding, which I might add, because we're talking about music. Music is the phrasing. So you say, "Once upon a time, there was an old lady." And so you have breaks, what Timothy Rosinski calls a phrase boundaries. I love that. And that's what music gives you, phrase boundaries, as opposed to, which I might add, the research says 1 out of 2 roughly third graders read "Once upon a time there was an old," which is disfluent and word by word monosyllabic. So that's what music gives, is the lilt and the life of the continuity of language, if we call it, or that river of language.
So is there specific data out yet that proves that this has been helpful?
Unfortunately, there is not any kind of longitudinal research directly. There's a couple. Rosenblatt did one on the power of poetry and how it helps reading with a doctoral dissertation, but I've tried to keep my finger on the pulse, and most of the research right now is coming from music educators who are, as you know, with all these budget cuts, are pushing out the arts and music teachers. So they're fighting to sustain and show the viability of, what the arts and music, why they're so essential.
Annalisa, do you have any comment here?
I do. One of the things, being on the music education side, one of the things that we know that the research has told us for a long time is that children's brains for the first 7 years of their life, what they primarily do is organize sensory input and information. And when kids can organize information well, then they love to learn and they're driven to learn, and it's a joyous experience. And in combination with music, because what we know about music is music helps organize the brain. So it's really the perfect combination, when music is brought into the learning, then kids love to learn and the brains get organized and they function the way they should, and then we have kids that want to read and want to learn.
Absolutely true. And I know they also have done studies where they have added the rhythmic clapping and the children that clap along rhythmically while reading score higher than the children that are just reading. So the rhythmic language that is used so often in John's books is so helpful for reading. And this is very, very good for the young children. But, reading needs to occur beyond music, beyond the using the music. And how does this transition typically occur, John, that they go from one of your very rhythmic books and then it can carry over into something like you had said, one of your favorite books that turned you on was E.B. White, right? How do you go from that rhythmic reading into just the straight reading?
Well, first of all, I want to say it's interesting. There is some research, I can't remember who said it, but I love this, that some children need to read with their feet first, and you talked about it, instead of flapping along. So read with your feet, and you're talking, Annalise, about, it gets into your bodily makeup. It's kinesthetic. This old man, he played one. If you can clap along with that, even if you take the melody out, it has that distinct meter. So the transition from that bridge to, say, the full-on fluency and what I call getting lost in a book, where the research has shown that children, good, fluent, avid readers, are no longer reading word by word. The brain and that organization that you spoke of is happening in this beautiful, holistic way that you're really marking about every third word. And that bridge is when you jump in that river. And so you, as Wallace Stevens said, the house was quiet and the world was calm, and the reader became the book and the book became the reader. For me, that magic act, and it's what I speak to of teachers and children, is when you lose track of time, you're inside that hologram, if you will. For me, it was Charlotte's Web in third grade, and I jumped in.
Beautiful way to look at it. Are you agreeing with me, Annalise, there?
Absolutely. I like how John talked about, music as being phrases. And once we can get kids to think in phrases as far, music and books go, then there's not a struggle to read word by word, and something lets go, and they can get entranced by the story rather than just trying to read the words.
Yeah, and you kind of lose your inhibition because you're so caught up in what you're doing. I mean, how many times children just start reciting those words, the A told B and B told C, and they just forget that they're reading. They just totally become the book, as you said.
Well, I think it can happen that way with music. It doesn't have to be a novel. That's a really good point, because I think sometimes we think it's got to be more and thicker and harder and faster.
So what practical advice do you have for teachers and parents who want to use music as a vehicle for creating passionate readers?
Oh, to read aloud. The power of being read aloud to it releases, somebody who's read, Charlotte's Web and read it to you, and there's some really sad parts and you're crying. A child was known to say, boy, that's the best book we ever read, even though they were actually read aloud too. You can still participate, and you are still building vocabulary, and you're building an ear for language. There's a feel for language. That's what we're talking about with, say, chicka chicka boom and rhythm and rhyme. Is getting a feel for, and then an ear for the language. What are those beautiful sounds? What are your favorite passages and from what books? And even being able to quote them or memorize them, they're showing it gives you that touchstone when you go to write. So the first thing you ask any writer is, who are your influences? Who do you admire? So you're really giving an ear and a love for language, and I think parents and teachers can get back to that you are liberating the struggling or the non-reader, but you are allowing them to participate as well when you read aloud.
So you're saying not just to read aloud, but then also invite discussion.
Absolutely, yeah.
The best gift that my dad ever gave me was reading aloud every night after dinner. And he read with inflection and voices and interest and lilt and pitch and all those things that you find in music. And in turn, I gave that to my children, and my children love to listen to me read, and I've taken that into the classroom and into my own home. The way my dad read to me is what helped me become a better reader, because I in turn heard all those things in my head, and that helped the book come alive. And that's really what we're talking about, is if we can get books to come alive, then we can get children to want to read.
That's a beautiful synthesis.
This has been a wonderful discussion, and I wish we had more time. And I want to thank you for the time you did give us. And you too, Annalisa. I truly enjoyed the commentary. Thank you. You've been listening to Music and Learning with Marianne Harmon. Thanks for listening.
This program is produced by Jack Street Media and is part of the affiliate Nanocasting Network. Thanks for listening.